The information in this presentation reflects the presenter's own personal experiences and honest opinions, and do not represent the opinions or positions of Roofstock. Nothing contained in this presentation is intended as real estate or investment advice and does not establish agency of any kind.
Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Emil Shore, and I'm joined by
Tom Schneider
and Michael Albom.
And today we are going to be continuing our series on tips for finding and vetting different members of your real estate investing team. Today we will be covering the lawyer. Let's hop into it. So let's talk about how you find and vet a lawyer. We'll break it down into 3 parts. So when in the process of your real estate investing journey or buying a property, should you look for this person? How do you source? So how do you go out and find a lawyer? And what are the best questions to ask to make sure they're legit and can help you and be a valuable member of your team? So let's start with when in the process should you find the lawyer? Do you guys have when have you guys done this in the past?
All right, so I'll jump in first. If you are investing passively, you're holding properties in your own name, it's not necessary that you buy them in an LLC. I would argue that within your checklist to get going as a remote real estate investor, getting an attorney in place is not high on that list, and that you don't have to do it before you start evaluating. You don't have to do it before you start buying. If you are looking to own these properties into a more complicated structure with either LLCs, sure, you're going to want to have an attorney either to help you, set up your LLC or using like a LegalZoom or one of those type platforms. But if you are like myself and perhaps you own a couple of properties not in an LLC, you have it in your own name, it's not necessary to get a lawyer up front or even after you own. It really depends on what you're doing and what your threshold for risk as it relates to having things in your own name. As far as timing, I would say it depends, and it's not necessary to do upfront.
So I'm going to take the counterpoint to a slight degree. I think it depends on what your risk tolerance looks like and what your starting assets look like. If you don't have a whole lot to your name, it's probably less important to go chat with an attorney prior to. But if you do have a lot to your name, you could have a bigger target on your back. And so I think just understanding what you're getting into, the risks you're taking on, and what structure, if any, might be appropriate for you. Those can all be really great questions to ask on the front end prior to purchasing. And just as you're looking to get involved with real estate as a whole, again, good questions to be asking, questions to go get answers to, just so you're coming to the table with all the information or as much information as you can. And so having a consult with an attorney doesn't have to be yours, but a real estate attorney in general can be really great. And how do I protect myself? But also understand that they are likely going to try to sell you something, all kinds of asset protection. Take everything you hear with a grain of salt and then go talk to other investors about what's actually happened in their world.
Another thing to think about is what are the different use cases that you're going to be using an attorney with? So one of them would be on the front end, you're setting up a structure. Maybe you're putting a fund together. Maybe you're putting just together a single member LLC. That's a use case of using an attorney. And if you're not going through that, it's not necessary that you find one. Other use cases that come in with an attorney is perhaps you buy a property and there's an eviction with the tenant or some kind of issue like that. More likely than not, your property manager is going to have some legal, representation or kind of like a third party that they'll use to manage the process of eviction or 3-day notices and all of that stuff. So it's not necessarily that you personally have an attorney to do this. This is something that you're paying your property manager to do. They're going to forward some of those costs to you, but they're going to get kind of better pricing because they're like at scale and probably have like pre-made templates for a lot of this kind of stuff. What other use cases would you be using an attorney with? Can you guys think of?
That's like 85% of my experiences with it. I've used mine in an insurance issue. I had to bring in my attorney and just be like, hey, I'm not getting the service and answers to the questions that I'm posing. And then also with a contractor that I had to fire, they were asking for all kinds of stuff, and I ended up firing them. And I copied my attorney, and they said, "You have to pay me." And I said, it's not going to work like that. And here's my attorney. And so if you'd like to say anything, you can say it to both of us, kind of a thing. And that solved that problem pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that.
On the front end, if you're buying with friends or whatever, creating a fund, so structuring that whole thing. I guess I'm repeating myself again. said that before, but
Yeah, I think structure is a huge part of it. And so making sure that you get that right on the front end is super, super important. And so I've used my attorney for that. And we were talking, and it's so one word can change the meaning of an entire contract. So making sure that that's right and designed to protect everybody involved, and it actually is designed to do what it's intended to do is really important. So I've done that in the past when setting up multi-member LLCs with partners, have her structure that and draft up those documents.
On those documents, there are some good hybrid approaches, such as LegalZoom and Rocket Lawyer, where they have these templates that are pretty much ready to go, be it tenant-related templates, which you're not going to need if you're using a property manager, but setting up an LLC and that kind of stuff, it's a nice hybrid approach, which might be a little bit more cost-effective than bringing on an attorney where you're paying $500 an hour or whatnot, just because setting up an LLC is kind of a punch and play thing where it's a well-worn path, where these hybrid approaches where you can buy these templates can be more cost-effective.
Yep, I would agree.
So I'll speak quickly to my own personal experience. I wouldn't say this is the right or wrong way to do it, but just so our listeners kind of have an example of when in the process one of us used it. So for me, I bought 4 properties in my name, no LLC, just directly in my name. And after my wife got married, had our daughter, we started really thinking about, what are some of the legal implications of having all these properties in just my name? We had a family member who went through probate, which, again, if you want to learn more about that, episode 41, like Michael talked about. And so I really wanted to avoid those things. Once family came into the picture, you start thinking a lot more about these things. And so that was the point for me, which was actually earlier this year, that I decided to enlist the help of a lawyer to help us create a trust. So everything, in case, knock on wood, anything happens to me, it flows directly to my family without much hiccup or headache. So that was kind of just my personal journey into when I picked up working with a lawyer.
And in episode 41, we also talk about trust stuff. And we talk a lot in that episode about anyone who's investing in real estate should absolutely investigate whether or not a trust is a good fit for them. I think probably it's going to be.
Yeah, especially if you have a family. And again, a lot of these properties are in your personal name, and there's all this like legal stuff that can happen if you don't set it up properly. So good idea to.
It's interesting how much of real estate, like strategy-wise, is like next generation, just like
after you die.
Totally. Yeah. But I mean, what a great gift that you can give to your family future. I think talking about defer, and then you die, with regards to 1031s and taxes. So anyways, short commentary there.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving, real estate.
Yeah.
Anytime you talk about legal stuff, it's always just such a happy episode. It's always the good stuff, right?
Doom and gloom and morbidity.
Right.
What's consistent in life? Death and taxes.
Death and taxes.
There we go. Next episode.
All right. So let's move on to how do you source? How do you go out and find people to interview? So how have you guys in the past, when you're looking for a lawyer, what did you do?
I got super lucky. My older brother had a good friend who I'm also friends with. And one of his good friends from college was a lawyer. And we've been good friends, and I've been a client of hers for a long time. So it's great that she's very young but experienced. And so she's going to be around for a while and looking to grow as well. So I don't have to work with someone for 5 years, have them retire, and then go look for another attorney. So she's been awesome to work with. So I just happen to know someone. I didn't really have to do a whole lot of interviewing, and we kind of just grew together naturally, and it was a really good fit. Tom, what about you?
I would go back. We've talked about in some of the other episodes of the hierarchy of where to identify these type of vendors. So at the top of that is personal relationships that you may have. And when I worked at one of the single family REITs, got to know the attorney. Actually, we might actually have him come on to the podcast soon. He's the general counsel at Mind Property Management, where another great resource is professional references, and then looking at forums, Bigger Pockets. Roofstock Academy members have access to our Slack channel, and then just general review. So I'd say those are the key spots in descending order of what I'd recommend for identifying a lawyer.
I think the big theme, and we're hitting on it in all these episodes, is the power of networking and asking either the people you work with or networking with other investors who they know because they've worked with them. They have experience with them, right? It's not like you're just going on Google and who's the first name that comes up or the first ad that comes up. And it's just so powerful to network and ride the coattails of others if they found good people.
Yeah, they don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. That was a fast section. So moving on to the last part, what are some good questions that our listeners can ask when they're interviewing a lawyer to make sure that's the right person to bring onto their team?
For me, I think the first question is, do they work with real estate investors? Because there's all kinds of attorneys out there that specialize in different disciplines, just like you have all kinds of different doctor specialists. If you had a problem with your hearing, you wouldn't go to an orthopedic surgeon, probably. I don't know. That's a guess. This is not medical advice. So same thing with attorneys and accountants and really all the team members we're talking about in these episodes for that matter. So making sure that they specialize in real estate and specifically working with investors, I think is really important because they're going to look to do certain things for you that are going to be different than if you were an owner occupant. They're going to treat you in a very specific way and look to structure things very specifically for you as an investor. And so when they have that experience and background, that's going to be really helpful for you. I also like asking where they can work. What states can they work in? Are they licensed in multiple places? Are you in California and the attorney's in Colorado? Does that pose any issues? Also asking what their fee structure looks like. That's a big one we talk about with a lot of the vendors we speak about working with. Are they hourly? Do they want a retainer? Do they charge by 15-minute increment? How do they bill and what does that look like? And then ask if they charge flat rates for certain services like setting up an LLC, asking them what their typical turnaround time is on inquiries and how they best like to communicate. If you text them a question, you get charged for that. If you call, email, what's the best way to get a hold of them? Tom, I don't want to give you the scraps again, so I'll make sure you get in here.
I'm coming up with some fresh stuff. So some attorneys' offices, there might be multiple attorneys. So here's an example of a question I like to ask. If there's multiple attorneys, is there different rates? So if the office perhaps has multiple attorneys, maybe there's a younger associate that they do more template work or more kind of bread and butter work at a lower rate. That's something to ask is, are there many attorneys that I have resources with? Because, with law, there are different types of specialties. So perhaps if you want a slightly more expertise on particular areas, it could be a bigger law office that has more resources versus a kind of a one-man show or one-woman show that's doing all the different work. This is just a way to evaluate different attorneys and what their resources are. I would also ask them about some specific use cases that they had in working with investors. Have they done the initial contract work up front in structuring funds? Have they done any work as it relates to dispute management with property managers or contractors? Have they done any work as it relates to eviction? Is just kind of go through their repertoire of what they have competency in law and just let them spiel, kind of get them started and let them talk about it.
And I think it's fair to say, Tom, would you agree that most attorneys during this kind of interview phase are not going to charge for their time?
No, I would be overt and clear that, hey, I'm in the process of evaluating. I'm speaking to 2 other attorneys and may or may not be speaking to 2 other attorneys, but that's between you and me. And just let them know that you're kind of in that evaluation phase.
Yeah. I would totally agree.
Solid.
And references, get some references. Love that. Can't say that enough for everybody. That's like, honestly, the biggest sort of BS detector is if you can get a reference who isn't their grandmother or niece or nephew or whatever, get a real reference and talk to them.
Solid. I don't have anything to add. I'm glad you guys, one note I had was expectation setting, but I think, Michael, you talked about it. Like let's say you decide to work with them. If you email or call or text, are they going to charge you for those 15 minutes or whatever it is? Or for smaller stuff within reason, right? Like if you're emailing them every week or something, okay, it's probably fair that they charge you. But if you have a question every couple months, are they going to charge you, or is that kind of just part of working with them? Anything else to add here, guys, before we wrap up?
I think that's good.
No, I think that's good. And I would say, if you're questioning it, just go reach out. It's one of those things like legal and accounting is one of the 2 areas where it's kind of a pain in the butt because they're expensive to deal with. But the things that they'll be able to do for you and answer for you are well worth the expense. And we are not experts as real estate investors in the law. We are not experts as real estate investors in accounting. So we need to go find people that are. And finding good ones, they're well worth the cost And so just kind of bite the bullet and keep track of those expenses because they are all deductions.
Yep.
It often ends up paying for itself in the long run. And this is your and your family's potential future. And so don't skimp out on a couple $100 of an attorney to try to go do it yourself to then potentially have it get messed up down the road. It's a small expense in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the risk that's being mitigated.
Penny wise, pound foolish. Don't be penny wise, pound foolish.
That's right. That's right. Man, I should have been an attorney.
Just go study bird law. Nice.
That's right, bird law.
Cool. So let's wrap this one up. We'll check you guys out in the next episode. Happy investing.
Happy investing.
Happy investing.